6:30. We'll just get going. Welcome, folks that are joining us. So we'll recall to order at 6:30. And I'd like to begin with the town of Smithers acknowledging the Gitumden clan and the Wet'suwet'en people on whose unceded traditional territory we live, work, and play. And the public is notified that this meeting is being recorded and webcast, a notice of which is outside these chambers on the bulletin board. Council, you have an agenda. May I have a motion to approve, please? Councillor Bucama, Councillor Ray, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. And then we have a couple delegations this evening. And first up are the representatives from the Bulkley Valley Farmers Market. And I'll just invite you to come forward to the delegation table between the lovely poinsettias that we have set up that will frame you. Thanks for coming. And as I mentioned, there's just a little circle on those mics. And when you press down, the mic will go red and everyone can hear you. So I'll just invite you to kind of introduce yourselves to council and your subject matter, and the floor is yours.
Hello, so my name is Megan Darcy, and I'm a longtime board member of the Bulkley Valley Farmers Market. And with me is Robin Zanetti, who is also a director on the board this year.
So hi, I am Robin. I'm one of the produce vendors at the market, as well as one of the members of the board. I want to start by giving an overview of this season and a little bit of an update. So it's my third year as a vendor, and this year felt busier than all the previous years. And it every year since the pandemic, it just feels like it's gotten more and more busy, both vendor-wise and attendees. So we had over 60 vendors this year, between 20 to 30 on average per market. We also had 31 new vendors this year. I'm just going to go through a couple highlights. We restructured our payment schedule for musicians this year to allocate more money for paying them. And that has proved to be quite successful. We had music almost every single market, most being local musicians. Throughout the season, our farmers market participates in the nutritional coupon program. The coupons are distributed through our community partners, which are the Pregnancy Outreach through Northern Society for Domestic Peace, Smithers Community Services, and the Salvation Army. Those coupons go to those coupons go to low-income families, pregnant people, and seniors. So our market alone processed over $65,000 worth of coupons in sales. Newmont Mine also donated a significant amount of money towards the coupon program for our community. The provincial coupon redemption rate was 81%, but our market had a redemption rate of 103%. And people who are part of the coupon program can collect coupons from wherever they're living or through their community partners, and can use them at different markets as well. So that's why we have a higher than 100% redemption rate. So that's the $65,000 was pretty significant for our market, because that is $65,000 that just goes right into local farmers and producers' pockets, and also provides that much money to people in the community to be able to come to the market and purchase maybe more than they could before. So we're pretty proud of that. Another highlight from the season, we applied for an inclusion grant through the BC Associations of Farmers Markets, and are working towards having a territorial acknowledgement sign made for the market that we can display each Saturday. We finished off the season with a harvest day on Thanksgiving weekend. It was a harvest-themed market with fall decorations, which was really well received by people attending. We had decorations and activities, some face painting for kids as well, and adults too. We also sponsor a few categories of prize money at the fall fair.
Megan, you just have to turn on. You just turned yourself off there. There
Oh,
we go.
you don't have to hold it down. That's quite good. In 2023, there was an economic impact study done for the farmers market. I'm not sure if you are aware, but that same sort of format of study was done for the market in 2006 and then 2012 and hadn't been done for approximately 12 years. And then the BC Association of Farmers Markets administered the overarching project, but involved UNBC, who was a partner that was involved in the first two studies. And the results of that study were that if you use a 1.5 multiplier for the money that flows through the market, there's an economic impact of $885,000 per year that the market has on this community. And then they did something a little bit, I'd have to go back and read the earlier studies, but they also did a similar formula for the impact that it has on the downtown businesses as well, and found that if you use the same multiplier, it comes out to 1.1 million per year of estimated economic impact. So that if you look at the 2012 one, it was slightly higher, but we now have Out of Hand, which provides a lot of the same product in a little bit more of a convenient fashion. So the two the two organizations, I guess, work in tandem fairly nicely. And so we have worked pretty hard to rebuild the business model of our market since the pandemic, because we struggled through the pandemic like everybody else, and we adapted as necessary and sort of had a core group of vendors that kept us going. But the fact that we had so many new vendors this year was it's attributed to a bunch of things, but including having a very excellent market manager. But it's really a testament to how stubborn we are, and to the fact that we really believe that this is a positive thing for our community. And so we really drove towards building the market back up after COVID.
Oh, there we go. Okay, we also wanted to talk about the Smithers Parks and Recreation Master Plan and some points to consider. The board has reviewed it and just wanted to talk about a few things. Just with parts of the plan that would have an impact on the farmers market if the location of the farmers market was to move. So one of the biggest things for us is highway exposure. A lot of people like local to the community know of the farmers market and will come and are dedicated, but we do get a significant amount of traffic through the market from people who see it on the highway as they're driving through. They stop and then they come in and walk around. So if the location is pushed back a little bit from the highway, it'll be a little bit harder to get that same volume. It's hard to get that same amount of traffic with just signage to draw people in if you're not as visible. The space and the flow of the other location, people will come to the market, they'll walk around, and then kind of the way that the natural flow of the market goes with all of our 3 different exits is people will often leave the market and walk up Main Street, and then we'll also visit businesses up there and walk around. For multiple entrances, it just helps us get exposed to even more pedestrian traffic. The Central Park building also provides shade for all the vegetable vendors. We all get put kind of on that side of the market because the morning shade helps with that. Myself particularly, because I grow a lot of greens, so the shade really helps me to keep my stuff fresh.
So in addition to those sort of pieces of the market that are important for its success, there's a few logistical things as well. And so one of them is power. And that's one thing that we didn't necessarily notice in the plan is an accommodation for that. So in the past, we've had power issues. And when the Lions still owned the train car, we actually had to deal with them to install a power box on the outside of the train. And we rely fairly heavily on that and power outlets along the side and on that new signpost for the Central Park building. And we have adjusted our stall allocation so that people that need power, for the most part, are along the outsides. So we don't have lots of cords running across the walkways. But we are, with the food vendors, et cetera, that have been coming in, we have been needing, in addition to the regular outlets, we've been needing the odd 220 volt outlet as well. So that is something that is a pretty core component of running the market successfully. The washrooms, we use the Central Park building washrooms, and we have an arrangement with them and pay them basically the cost of the janitorial service and the cost for the power. And we pay CICK now for the cost of the power that we use. So we have sort of standing arrangements with those guys. And in addition to using the train car power box, we also donated money to help build the stage at CICK and have a pretty good relationship where we are able to use some of their sound equipment and the stage for the farmers market music. So, I mean, I know it's been there for a long time, and so we've obviously developed these relationships over time, and it's not saying that we couldn't potentially do that again, but right now we sort of have a really nice setup where we can kind of accommodate everything and be able to, what's the word? Like, we've been able to build towards this. And so we have some concerns about the fact that if we were to move, we would be starting again. And we don't quite know what that would look like. And I think that it would be nice for us to maybe have a little bit more of a proactive role in some of the planning. Not as people that are sort of demanding things, but more just as somebody who has a stake in the Central Park plan and whatever the future looks like. Okay, sounds good. We're actually done. The only thing I was going to say is parking is the other consideration, because we need a lot of parking and it's been an issue in the past. So the way that it looks like the new plan is structured, it doesn't look like there's really any parking, because it looks like we take up the new parking lot. But we wanted to say thank you very much. We're really appreciative of the fact that the town of Smithers works with us to occupy that space. And we've been there for a long time now, since I've been involved, which started in 2004 and before that. So at least 20, 25 years. And we just really are grateful for the fact that we have such good space and for the fact that the town has been so good to us over the years. And thank you for having us here and listening to our spiel.
Thanks so much, Megan and Robin. Appreciate it. Counselors, if there's any questions or comments back for the presenters. Counselor Raven.
I just want to say thank you for highlighting the coupon and its success. I have talked to many people and they are very grateful for that program, and it's really helped them out. And the other thing is also the farmers market is such a great place for people to gather. I've talked to a lot of seniors and people that are isolated and maybe don't know people in the community. And it's such a great place for people to come to and network and just feel to be part of Smithers. So I just want to say thank you for creating that space.
Thanks, Councilor Raven. Any others? I just had a question because you referenced to the park planning process. And I'm just wondering if that was something that you were able to participate in when it was underway, or if, yeah, just that question.
We didn't find out about the community meeting until after, but we did participate in the survey. And then we're aware that you have adopted the plan as it stands right now.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. I mean, everything is a work in progress for sure. I just wondered about that part. So yeah, thanks. Councilor Raven commented on the appreciation for the work that's been going to the market for a very long time. I love to get good local food, and I appreciate the social aspect of the market as well. So thanks for your work as well over a long period of time for those that have been supporting the market. So one last call, if there's any other questions. Councilor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we will talk about this specific item on the next scheduled council. Is that correct?
Yeah, thanks for that reminder. You may know already, but our practice is usually to hear from delegations. And if we have a response that comes later, your general request is just that you be kept sort of apprised and involved in the planning process. So our staff have heard the request if there's any, oh, the lights just went out behind us, behind you. So if there's a specific response to that, it will come from our staff and a recommendation and a response back after the next meeting. So usually we have some time between meetings to consider the request and to respond versus responding off the cuff this evening. So just so you understand that process. So thanks, Councillor Patterson. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And my last comment was just, it would be interesting for the survey that if it's done in future, Councillor Raven touched on it just under the community benefits, how we might be able to gauge the social impacts. I've recently just come back from another significant number of conferences that focus on where we have opportunities for people of all various backgrounds to intersect and connect. It just contributes exceptionally to our community well-being. So I'd just be interested in learning more about expanding maybe that particular section, but thank you very much.
Thanks. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in addition to the social piece of the farmers market, like it was originally born of a place for people that had a small business that needed to sell their stuff. And we have seen time and time again that that whole piece of it being a small business incubator is incredibly valuable. Like it really gives people a lot of opportunity to try out different things that they've had ideas behind and learn how to display material and learn how to label material. And there's a lot of support there for not just from the market manager, but from people who are longtime vendors. That it's we don't have a formal mentorship program, but we've talked about mentorship quite a bit, and certainly we've had a lot of voluntary mentorship between the vendors.
Thanks. Mr. Dewar.
I was just going to see if it was possible to have the socioeconomic assessment shared with us, and then we could just share it around with council or the report coming from it.
I think it was sent as part of our delegation request.
Okay,
But yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, it was in the agenda. And I wanted to add one thing about the social aspect as well. It wasn't the focus of the study, but 2 points that did come out of it was that 52% of the survey respondents said they visit the market regularly, and they had 780 people visit that market on that day. So yeah.
Alrighty, thank you very much. Appreciate your time and your work ongoing. So thanks very much for that, the contribution to the community. Okay, and you're welcome to stay with us or to reclaim your evening as you wish. All right, I see we have our second delegation online. There we go, Ms. Larstone. Welcome. Maybe just say something so we make sure we can hear you.
Great. Yes, a little mic check. Can you
We
hear me?
cannot, so hang on just a second. Can't hear you.
Okay. I'll do some work on my end.
Hang on just a second, Michelle.
Okay.
Ms. Larstone, if you can hear me, please try. I can't see you right now, so we're just testing audio.
Okay. Can you hear me now? No? Testing, testing.
So I'm not. Hang with us.
Michelle, could you just continue to talk as we test the microphone here? Thank you.
Sure. I'll recite the alphabet. How about that? A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Michelle, would you be able to try without your headphones, if that's possible?
Yeah.
Does that work? Can you hear me now? No? How about that?
Hi, Michelle.
Oh,
I
I
believe that it might be on your end if you're able to disconnect your Bluetooth and try again on that side.
Sure.
Thanks.
Anything now?
Sure. Actually, Michelle, if you can hear me, we're just going to take a break for 5 minutes and we'll see, we'll sort of leave you, sorry
Okay.
about this, but we'll leave you with Mr. Georgia and hopefully we can get
Sure.
it connected. So for
Sounds good.
council, and Ms. McKinley, we're recessed for 5 minutes.
Michelle, are you still able to hear me there? She's going to leave and come back. Okay.
I'm going to
it's
try
Will here.
signing out and coming back and see if that helps.
Perfect. We can hear you completely fine now.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay, so I'm not going to leave.
thank you for your patience as we work through this.
No problem.
Okay. Just put you back on the screen there.
Oh, I can see how giant my head is in council chambers. Lovely.
So we have everyone in the room. So despite the fact that I just called a recess, with the permission of those at the table, we'll recall earlier. And that way we'll be able to hear from Ms. Larstone and let her have her evening back when we're done. So we've got, you can hear me as well?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, so thanks for your patience on that and to staff for making it work. So thanks for joining us. It's nice to see you and I'll give you the floor. If you don't mind just sort of introducing yourself and your subject matter, and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor, and good evening, council and staff. My name is Michelle Larstone, and I'm here in my role as a project leader with the Skeena Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation team. So based in Smithers. I'm at home tonight because I have a cold. Hopefully I sound okay to you. Wish I could be there in council chambers with you, but thought it best to stay in my kitchen. I'm going to talk to you tonight for just a few minutes about a project that I've been involved in for the last 3 years in my role with the Ministry of Indigenous Relations. And it's called Skeena Roundtable. And it's a project that I'm coming to talk to Smithers Council about tonight to both bring awareness to the project and also encourage regular attendance from Smithers. I think the roundtable would benefit from having Smithers there and vice versa. I think the town of Smithers would be really interested in the information that we've been providing at that roundtable. So I have a presentation that I'm going to put up on the screen, which will make my face disappear, which I'm going to be happy about. So I'm going to share my screen and please just let me know if you can see it. And also, if you're seeing all kinds of other crazy boxes or just my slide.
We've got your slide.
You've got my slide. Okay, awesome. Please let me know if my slides aren't advancing. And I'll do my best to fix that. So I've already really introduced the topic. Here we are on November 26th, and it's me, Michelle Larstone, presenting to you. The purpose today, and I did already sort of skate over this, it's to share information about the Skeena Roundtable, to request a regular delegate from the town of Smithers, and also to answer any questions that you might have about this project. So the Skeena Roundtable, what is it? We've got a little picture on the side there of what the BC Public Service refers to as the Skeena region, the Skeena Natural Resource Region. So big swath of the province includes a lot of Highway 16 and all the way up north of Highway 37. So it's really an information forum that's led by a couple of ministries. The ministry I work for, Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, and also the Ministry of Water, Land, and Resource Stewardship. Membership of this roundtable, of this information forum, includes representatives from local governments, from Burns Lake all the way across to Port Edward and Prince Rupert. Also interest groups, so for example, recreation groups and conservation groups, and also representatives from different industries that operate in the natural resource section of the Skeena region, such as representatives from mining associations and forestry companies and community forests. Everyone's seeing my slides advance, just doing a quick tech check.
Yeah, we got him.
Okay.
You're
great.
on the Skeena
Okay,
Roundtable
great.
background slide. now.
Yes, I am on the Skeena Roundtable background. So just quickly, where did this idea for an information forum between BC and local governments come from? In 2021, so 3 years ago, we did an assessment. BC did an assessment and took some time to go out and talk to a bunch of different sectors in the Skeena region. And really sort of ask them, how is BC doing when it comes to sharing information about what the province is up to regarding our work that we're doing with Indigenous people on different kinds of reconciliation initiatives in the Skeena region, and pretty specifically around natural resource reconciliation initiatives. So we went out, we asked people, how are we doing? Do you feel like you're getting enough information? Do you feel like you know what BC is doing? Are you getting information in a timely way, in a way that's accessible? And what we heard back was a pretty resounding no. We want our information to come differently. We want it more often. We feel like we don't really know what the province is up to, and we don't really love hearing about things through the media or last minute by being invited to a signing ceremony. We want to know. We want to be on the journey with you. We want to be on the path of knowing what BC's up to. So based on that feedback and this idea of wanting more regular, timely, transparent information, we established the Skeena Roundtable in 2022 as a forum for information sharing, for discussion, for shared learning, and for relationship building. And we sent out invitations, membership invitations, to all of those sectors that I mentioned that we talked to in 2021, local government officials and staff, a bunch of different interest groups, and a bunch of different industry representatives. We also sent letters to all Skeena First Nations, telling them that we were initiating this project, and we sought input on the terms of reference. So what was this Skeena Roundtable going to do? What was its goals around sharing information about our reconciliation work? We also really endeavor to have Indigenous groups co-present with BC at the meeting. So not being, they're not part of our regular membership. Instead, they come as partners when we have a presentation. Then we'll often ask the First Nations partner to come and co-present with BC to the membership of the Skeena Roundtable. So this is important to you because it has to do with like, how much time is this thing that you're talking about? So we offer 3 kind of distinct packages of opportunities for our membership. The first thing is the meetings. So we have 3 half-day virtual meetings per year. October, December, March. They're always on the first Tuesday of the month in the morning from 9 to 12. And at those presentations, we, as BC, we convene these meetings and we decide on a different project or initiative that BC has in place with an Indigenous group. And we present it to the Skeena Roundtable so that they can hear about what BC's doing, ask some questions, and just really engage with with some of the work that BC has underway. So for example, BC and Lake Babine presented recently on the foundation agreement that BC and Lake Babine have signed together and what it looks like to implement that agreement, including land transfer. We also had the Skeena Sustainability Assessment Forum present. So both the nation and BC presented about the trusted data that this assessment forum is in the process of collecting on the land to help inform better natural resource decisions. So that's one of the three opportunities that the Skeena Roundtable offers are these meetings where presentations are made and there's a chance to ask questions. We also offer an annual field trip, an opportunity to get Skeena Roundtable members together in person. And what we've been trying to do is have it be hosted by an Indigenous nation. So first year we were hosted by Gitniao and learned all about the work, their governance, as well as their moose project and their fish project. And we ate food together, and just generally it was an amazing day out on the land and a chance to hang out together and have some laughs and build some relationships. And just this past June, we went to Kitsil's First Nation. They hosted us at their canyon. Again, learned so much about their culture, went for a guided tour of the longhouses plus the canyon, and spent some time with their elected officials to learn about both their treaty process and also about their rich culture. So that's the field trip. Then the last thing that we offer is an annual learning opportunity to expand our thinking and our knowledge together. So the first year we offered an opportunity to talk about and learn about a concept called ethical space. And this past year we had someone, professor from UVic, come and talk to us about Indigenous governance and all the different forms that comes in. And then this coming February 2025, we're going to have someone come and from the Justice Institute to talk with us about collaboration with First Nations. So those are the three distinct activities. They're all obviously optional. Some people find coming to the virtual meetings totally fits into their schedule, whereas a field trip is much, logistically, it's harder for people to make, but these are opportunities that we offer as part of the Skeena Roundtable. Last slide's just a picture of a bunch of us at Kitsil's Canyon this June. It was very, very wet, as June can be in Kitsil's Canyon, but look how happy we were. So we had a great day. This was us down on the lookout over the canyon that day. So that's my presentation. I'm hoping that Mayor and Council will consider appointing a regular delegate to the Skeena Roundtable. I will note there's no limit on the number of people from the town of Smithers who can attend. You could all come to our meetings and our learning opportunities and our field trips, or maybe just one person can make time for that. So happy to answer any questions now, and my email address is on the screen as well if there's anyone that wants to follow up that way. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Michelle. I'll just look to the table to see if there are questions first. If anyone has questions or comments? I'm not seeing any hands now, so I'm just going to say thanks, and thanks for your time earlier today to help sort of walk me through this. And you know this already, but we'll sort of hear back from our staff in the next little bit as well before the next meeting, which is when any appointments or delegations would be approved by council. And I've been an intermittent attendee, and I do have the next date on my calendar for this. So that happens before our council reconvenes. So I'll do my very best to be at the next one. And I'll one more glance around the table if there are questions or comments. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Michelle, thank you so much for coming, and I hope you really, really feel better. And we'll be in touch at least within the 2 weeks, but perhaps before. And thanks for your patience as well at the beginning when we were trying to figure out how to make people heard and seen and heard.
Thank
So
you.
Thank you very much.
For having me.
Okay, then enjoy your evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, let me regroup. So next up are the minutes. So we have minutes, sort of item 8.1, regular meeting of council of November 12th for adoption, please. Councillor Patterson, Councillor Raven, any errors or omissions? All in favor? Opposed, and that's carried unanimously. Committee of the Whole from November 5th for adoption. Councillor Patterson, Councillor Bucama, any errors? All in favor? Opposed, and that's carried unanimously. And I will just look to Ms. Smith now. We're at section 9 for items to be released. Ms. Smith?
In addition to item 9.1, 9.2 will be at the November 26th closed meeting of council. Council resolved the reappointment of Alexander McDonnell, Charmaine O'Coffey, Amy Burgess to the Smithers Public Library Board for a 2-year term expiring on November 30th, 2026, and that council approves the appointment of Melissa Colonel to the Smithers Public Library Board for a 1-year term expiring on November 30th, 2025.
Thanks, Ms. Smith. And the other item is contained within the agenda package, and it is the appointment to the Select Committee on Community Safety. So thanks for that. Any comments from council? Okay, seeing none, we are up to councillor reports. First up, Councillor Bucama.
Thank you, Mayor Atwell. It's a little outdated because I missed the last meeting, but on October 25th, I helped out at the Friends of the Library book sale. Very successful fundraiser for Friends of the Library. After expenses, they raised almost $6,700. 48 volunteers were helping out, and lots of positive comments about the fact it was held at St. Joe's instead of being crammed into the Legion building. So people enjoyed all the room. And just want to thank the Friends of the Library for the great work they do in our community. I also was very struck by the generosity of our community. I sat at the door for 3.5 hours taking donations, and lots of people give a lot of money for just a small number of books. Yeah, I think it's a reminder of how people really value the library in our community. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bucama. That's really nice. Councillor Elliott.
I have nothing to report this week, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Leonard.
Nothing to report this week.
Okay, all right, so we're going to move to the report from Councillor Patterson, and it's a little out of our normal routine, but at this point, Ms. Smith can correct me if I'm wrong. Do I need to recess the open meeting or just move to the committee of the whole? Okay. Okay. Pursuant to bylaw 1952 or council procedure bylaw, look, I'm going to move that we move to a committee of the whole meeting, and I'll just need a seconder. Please, Councillor Leonard, thank you. We're stalled. All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so we are in the committee of the whole. And approval, please, for the agenda. Councillor Bucama, Councillor Raven, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so we're there. And we are taking this opportunity just to set aside a few more minutes for Councillor Patterson's report. And so Councillor Patterson, I'm going to give you the floor. And I think we kind of have a predetermined time, but I'm sure you know that. And so we'll just over to you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I will try to keep it as short as possible, recognizing this is a bit unusual. There's just a minor note that on the agenda itself, it refers to this presentation being a debrief from the Mental Health and Addiction Symposium. Just a slight correction. This is actually the Community Safety and Wellbeing Conference. While both conferences were very similar, this will be specific just to the one that was held in November. where both Her Worship and myself attended. Again, a little bit unusual in presenting this information, but felt that there was a significant amount of information that was presented based on a ton of conversations that this council has had to date and feedback that we hear from our community. And just an incredible amount of experts in their field from not only across Canada, but across the globe. So I hope that you find some of this information useful. And I'll just preface it by saying these are just my notes. Don't claim to be an expert in any one of these fields or slides that are presented. So I believe there will be some time after for discussion, but it is really just to relay on the information for those who were unavailable to attend. So again, this was in November. Myself and Her Worship attended, and it was held on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking peoples. And we were able to connect with an exponential amount of leaders in various fields related to community safety, well-being, everything from homelessness to crime to dealing with the illicit drug crises. There was just a ton of plenaries and a ton of information to digest. So this is my way of trying to boil it down in just a few short slides. So I'll speak as quickly as I can. So just bear with me. Next slide, please, Mr. George. So I've actually added slides 2 and 3 myself. I just had to take a step back and ask myself, what do we actually mean when we're talking about community well-being? I'll confess, even though I've mentioned that quite a bit, I wasn't actually sure. So I thought, well, I better dive in. No one actually talked about this specifically at the conference, but people did talk about a community well-being framework. So I just did sort of a simple Google search, and there are a number of frameworks similar to this one that you can find available to you. Many of them are related to urban planning, which again was new to me, but you can see it's just basically a simple framework that looks at how we consider social, environmental, economic, cultural, and political considerations when we talk about community well-being. I've seen something very similar in my day job with the province where we talk about strategic land use planning. It's the same sort of considerations in those buckets that you see there. Next slide, please, Mr. George. Something else that I learned at the conference, one of Her Worship's fellow mayors sat on a panel and informed us that we have something called the Community Wellbeing Index, which was new to me. So this is just information just for you to review and encourage everyone just to take a peek. The information is quite old for our community, so it'd be interesting to see how that's updated and where we would rank, but not surprised to see that we ranked quite high on community well-being. Next slide, please, Mr. George. So these are some key takeaways. I was able to attend 2 of the 4 days. It was quite a significant amount of information to take in, but there was a number of key themes that were emergent. So these were some of the comments that were made by multiple presenters. So I thought it was important just to highlight them for you. A key takeaway being we can and must do things differently. There was a number of people who talked about pressures that we face at a municipal level, but that really we're all stronger and better if we work together. And that it's just the beginning, and a lot of what we're dealing with now in the crises that we see around the environment or housing or drugs, that we are just starting to make change now, recognizing that it's going to take significant time, likely long before many of us will be around. Building relationships, including having compassion and kindness, are key to community well-being. Heavy emphasis on building the relationships, in particular, meeting with people who have opposing views of our own. And I'll talk a little bit about urban planning and some of the things that were highlighted and how we might be able to do that. Community well-being needs to be rooted in reconciliation, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And that removing the stigma around drugs is incredibly important. Not only drugs, but any form of addiction. You know, one of the panelists made a comment that really struck home for me that says, if the first thing you do in the morning is look at your phone, you're addicted to your phone. And I will admit that I am severely guilty of that. So the point there is just allowing us to look inward to help to support removing stigma that we see plaguing a lot of our communities. And again, we're all works in progress. We're all trying to be better, and that we all have a role, pardon me, to play in community safety and well-being, including municipalities, and that we play a critical role. And there was many examples that were provided of what small communities are doing to be able to make systemic change, both at a large and small scale. And last but not least, have the courage to make change. And make sure that we're listening to the experts and following the data. So something that I thought was interesting is that we as a council had voted to have our community safety wellbeing, where we do have a lot of those experts and are talking about following the data. So that was great. Next slide, please. So Brianna Bear, incredibly talented artist and traditional knowledge keeper, gave us just some gentle reminders around making sure that we're intimately familiar with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action. We've had some conversations about that here at our council, so I'll just tread lightly on this particular one, and that there's many more conversations that we are having as part of our partnership agreement with the Office of the Wet'suwet'en and how we advance some of those things. So I won't get into all the details, but these are just some of the key points that she wanted us to take back to our communities and making sure that we're grounding ourselves in that work. And the essence is that we know when communities are working to advance reconciliation, a significant amount of those calls to action work towards ensuring that communities are well. Again, she really highlighted building relationships is key to supporting our well-being, and not just, through social media, but actually building relationships in person. It made me think of, Councillor Raven getting out to all of our sort of opportunities for community and meeting with people and having those conversations, and just how critically important that is just to the wellness of our community. And she said something interesting, but that we're all really building extensions of our family, which I thought was really beautiful. That link there is just some interesting dialogues that she has led in partnership with the City of Victoria in just having conversations with members around the community in what they may know or not know around reconciliation. So just something interesting for us to look at if we're interested. Next slide, please. So Mayor Marianne Alto gave a really great presentation on how they're leading their community wellbeing and safety plan. Just a really brief note here is that they switched the language from community safety and well-being to well-being and safety. And she highlighted that, and I thought that that was important nuance to say that we know that if you're not focusing on the wellness of a community, that's going to ensure that there's going to be a lack of safety, where it's vice versa. So again, I won't get into all the details, but a big part of the conversation that she had, which I thought was really important because we talk about it at this council as well, is we cannot boil the ocean. We cannot take it all on, and many people expect us to, but they didn't let that deter them. So this is just a bit of an overview on how much information they were given and how they actually moved forward with just a significant amount of information. And these are just some of the key themes and things that they were trying to deal with around, the housed or the unhoused, businesses, residents, visitors. Again, I won't read it all, but I'll just show you a little bit about how they've sort of digested just a significant amount of information. Next slide, please. So first and foremost, they recognized that although they had a significant amount of data, that wasn't enough. And that really back to Brianna Bear's point, and that the dialogue that we have within communities is essential to how we support community wellness. So they did an extensive amount of community engagement to ensure that people felt heard and what community safety meant to them. They did a significant amount of community engagement sessions like we do here with our communities. And they heard everything from policing to bike lanes to parks to housing was really important to people when they thought of community safety and well-being. And these are just some examples of 2 questions that they asked people as part of their engagement. So if you could change one thing, what would that be? And if anything was possible. Next slide, please. So I was very impressed in how her and her staff were able to take, I think it was, don't quote me, her worship might be able to remember. I think it was like 20,000 responses, or just an astronomical amount of information, and synthesize it down to 60 key recommendations. I mean, if I can find them, I'll send them out, but I think they're still in the early stages of drafting. And these are, again, just some of the key themes that they saw. And they're working with just a significant amount of folks within their community, similar to how Smithers does, to look for opportunities to invest in programs to support community safety well-being. So I've just listed a couple of them there. They had some great examples of things similar to what we refer to as the situation table that are actually looking to address some of the key recommendations. So for example, they call their, similar to a situation table, a community lead crisis response team. This pilot at a municipal level was so successful for them that it's actually now been taken on by the province. And I'll mention a little bit about pilot projects being a key theme that was highlighted for folks to say that that model of doing things small but pilot are far more successful in the long run, because if the province sees that it actually works, they'll take it over. I shouldn't say they will, but the examples that were provided is that it has been very successful in the province recognizing that work and then taking it on for municipalities. Next slide, please. So this was a fairly intense, significant eye-opening presentation for myself. This is by Lisa Lapointe. She was quite brilliant. This presentation will not do it justice, but she was the BC Chief Coroner from 2011 to 2024. And I just want to recognize that on this slide, I made a gross error in that third bullet there where we say that from fentanyl, that crisis declaration is around 1,000 people have died. From that particular date, that should be 10,000 people. So to date, when you Google the number of individuals who have died since 2024, it's significant. It's up to just over 20,000 people. I won't read every single one of these. I'll let you sort of digest them yourself. But the number one key theme that I heard from Ms. Lapointe was how frustrated folks like herself and others who sit on a panel and give recommendations to the province were confused and frustrated by the provincial health crisis that was declared by COVID-19, and how many people actually died from COVID versus the announcement that we made around the toxic drug crisis. So both being a crisis, but just the significant amount of people who died in comparison from COVID to illicit drugs. She encouraged us to review the significant amount of information that is available to us from the BC Chief Coroner's Office on those statistics. Again, I won't get into all of it, but it was extremely eye-opening to see those numbers and how many people talked about the North. I think that was probably the hardest to sort of take in and think about, how do I bring this information back to our community? I won't sugarcoat it. I know a lot of you already know it, but we are disproportionately affected. The numbers are staggering, but we can talk about that later. Thank you. Next slide. So dissecting the toxic drug crisis, this was really interesting. So I thought I would include her slide here. She talked a lot about the recent decisions around decriminalization to criminalization of drugs. And her cautioning us to think about whether or not that was a failure. I'll confess, I had thought that just because I was so sort of uneducated on where we need to be or what recommendations have been made by experts like herself. And here she talked about this paradigm of prohibition and really where we want to be. Mr. George, if you don't mind just circling the center there where it says public health regulation. And a great example that she gave was alcohol. So for example, she said, even though we looked to legalize drugs, the problem was we didn't provide safe supply. So similar to alcohol, if you don't legalize it and provide sort of safe supply, people are going to suffer and people are going to die. They're going to find drugs wherever they can find it. And we know that those drugs are just significantly toxic. And even, for example, with fentanyl, just one small, tiny micro of fentanyl is toxic. And so here she shows, again, just that paradigm shift that if we do nothing, that a lot of the gangsterism that we see just takes over. So really, here just to show that that's basically where we want to be, where we have the public health regulation. Next slide, please. So again, this is just in conclusion of some of those staggering numbers that we see. I was really taken aback by the leading cause of death in BC around the age. So starting as young as 10. That made me quite sad, thinking that we have just a significant amount of youth who are not only addicted to drugs, but are dying of them. Another piece she talked about in why it was so important for us to decriminalize drugs was this piece around there's stigma related to those who use drugs or those who we see in public, where the significant amount of individuals that we see who are dying and overdosing from these drugs are doing it in isolation, so by themselves and at home. Thank you. So again, there was a significant amount of plenaries at this session. They were holding about 3 or 4 at the same time. So it was really difficult to choose which ones to go to, but I tried to come from a place of what are conversations that we've heard from the public and that we've talked about at this table. Again, I won't go into great detail because this is very repetitive of Ms. Lapointe's presentation, but all the individuals who are listed here at the top are either have lived experience or are leading provincial or national strategies to address the drug crisis. It was interesting, this piece around enforcement or medical. That was something that I thought was quite interesting, in that they feel that the province hasn't made the determination between which approach they want to take. Is the illicit drug crisis something that we feel is a medical crisis, or is it related to enforcement? And I think we've had many conversations at this table and with community members trying to navigate this crisis ourselves. So again, they felt that that was something that the province really needed to look inwardly and sort of make a determination on which approach they wanted to take, and not just leave it up to all of us to make that determination. So this was a great plenary that Her Worship sat on. So this is around small town safety, so solutions and challenges. I would say this was the most inspiring of all of the sessions that I went to, and that every single mayor who spoke talked about the significant challenges that we also face within our community, but had incredible examples of things that they're doing. So Mayor Michelle Staples talked a lot about the densification of their business and the proximity to services for those who might be suffering from addiction or homelessness, and how difficult that is to try to help to support everyone at the same time. Talked a lot about social media. That was actually a key theme across the 2.5 days that I was there, and just how toxic social media can be, and how it creates this perception of, you know, for example, municipalities not doing anything, where maybe in the background, or we are in the background doing a significant amount of work, and just how that creates growing tension, pardon me. Talked about compassion fatigue, where she feels, or she had mentioned that she thought that many individuals, while they weren't not compassionate community members, they're just exhausted, feeling like they're trying many things to try to help to support one another, but people are just tired. She fought really hard and highlighted this particular piece that I've heard Councillor Ray talk about in the past around this scarcity model, and that either through taxation or grant funding and things that are downloaded onto municipalities is just not sustainable. And she talked about how they just fought extensively and continue to fight because it's just not sustainable. She did mention the situation table, which has been really successful in their community as well. And they had a credible example around this plan for a village, and how they're working to support those in need. But again, she talked a lot about how they had done this extensive fight and were told no, 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 and no. Time and time and time again. And then the time was right, and the province asked, and they had a plan, and they were ready. So that was great. Port Angeles. So this was interesting. This was just to hear what's happening on the other side of the border. This was Mayor Kate Dexter. She talked a lot about just their taxation model, and I kind of struggled to even comprehend how they do things on the other side of the border. But my understanding is that for them, and I think Mayor Atchell can correct me if I'm wrong, anything that they want to do just is a significant increase to taxation. And again, it's just completely unsustainable, like we see within our own community. I don't think I'll get into too much detail. I'll just let people sort of digest some of the things that she talked about here. A lot of what she talked about, which was really interesting, was around their emergency response programs and how they're working in partnership with other service providers. So frontline workers out in the community, helping to support one another by actually physically being there together. So that was really interesting. Our very own Gladys Atchell. So I think you're all very familiar with the issues that we face. But again, another key theme around strengths was the situation table. So that was great to highlight. And then obviously we were able to highlight some of our other efforts that we've made over the course of the last year. Next slide, please. Canmore, so this is Mayor Sean Prost. If I get that right, I feel so bad. They kept not enunciating his name right, so I hope I got it right. So this is really interesting. So for Canmore, their number one issue that they face within their community is that the housing is so unaffordable, and they're predominantly a tourist-driven industry, that they're fighting so extensively to ensure that they don't have to bus all of the service workers into their community, that they created this Canmore Community Housing Corporation. So they were actually able to buy a significant amount of housing within their own community to ensure that they could keep it below fair market value, so the people who live there can stay there and aren't forced out by a significant amount of people who want to visit that particular community. They also rely heavily, as we do, for example, in traveling to Prince George, they rely heavily on travel to Calgary for a lot of their essential services. So it was just interesting in, although they were the furthest, I would say, from some of the other locations as far as geographical, that they faced a lot of the similar issues that we do as well. Next slide, please. So Dr. Drilling, this was incredibly interesting. This opened my eyes to how wrong I've been thinking about how we address homelessness and helping to support those in our community who are disproportionately affected by mental health or homelessness or drugs, and how you can actually make significant changes in how we support one another through urban design. I won't get into a significant amount of what he had said here, but he had just an incredible amount of examples where in countries they've been actually able to eradicate homelessness, or seniors feeling isolated, or the homeless, being housed. And the essence of his presentation was that by creating spaces where we intersect, for example, like the Smithers Community Market, or how we design, for example, a new library or a pool with maybe adjacent housing, they've been able to basically eradicate crime, homelessness, things like that. I asked him for a little bit more data specific to the crime, so I'll pass that information along. But it was really incredible to see his presentation saying that, it's not as simple as just saying, well, we're going to build a community shelter. There's a lot more to that. Next slide. So he did an extensive survey over the city of Calgary, where he actually monitored what wasn't working well in their community. And really, the essence there was, again, they built a significant amount of shelters, overnight shelters, but they still found there's a significant amount of people within the downtown core that needed support, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And that again came back to the need for places for people to gather during the day. So it's not as simple as saying, well, we'll build a shelter, people will stay there, and then that will solve all of our issues. People need to feel connected to one another. They need to feel supported. They need to have access to the services they need. And so that was just part of his synthesis there. Next slide, please. This was, again, another plenary. So we had the Victoria Chief of Police, their bylaw enforcement, and the lead for crime reduction intervention. The synthesis here is that all of the parties identified there and programs that they were a part of were working in isolation, and that they decided that they were better if they worked together. So these are some of the examples of how they're doing that. One of the key things that I thought was interesting is, again, the stigma around individuals who may be homeless or have mental health needs, or potentially suffer from addiction, are the ones who are committing the crime, where that is not the case. And that's very much rooted in stigma, and that it's actually usually only 20% of individuals who are responsible for 80% of the crime. So we just need to do a significant more research, analysis, and communication to support education in our communities, so people are aware of what's actually happening. And I will mention that this is part of the conversation that we're having at the Community Safety and Wellbeing Group. Just some really cool examples of how Victoria Police are supporting their staff. They're talking about how frontline workers are really taking the brunt of a lot of the things that we see happening within our communities. And one of the staggering comments that was made by the chief is that they can't even keep track anymore of the impacts that they see to their staff. It's just off the charts. So they're tackling it head on by having in-house psychologists. He's not putting members on the street until they've had just a significant amount of training around just mental health, well-being, working with various groups within the community who have different religions, background, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a whole list of things that they're doing there, so I won't get into all of it. Next slide, please. This was interesting just to see where we're at as far as having new bylaw enforcement officers and seeing that connection and how they're working with the RCMP. So these are just some of the reflections that they've had as well in their new model as well. Just like us, they have significant challenges with those who are entrenched in the streets. Obviously ours is not as significant, but just talking about how they're getting out, boots on the ground, working together to meet with people in the community and really trying to help people get the supports that they need. Again, a lot of social media spreading misinformation, which is incredibly damaging. They feel for their staff who are actually working incredibly hard to help to support people. So just getting people to sort of taper their expectations and say, you know, not everything that you read online is correct. This piece around the loudest voices are heard or should not be heard. That was a key theme that I heard time and time again. Everybody sort of recognizing that when we are having conversations, whatever the priority is of the day, that we really need to be cognizant that typically it's the people who are most opposed to particular issues that we're talking about, but that we need to remind ourselves that it's not necessarily the loudest voices that are to be heard, not that we don't or should not hear them, but just to keep in the back of our mind, how do we engage with other people who are in support of some of the things that we're doing or maybe don't have the loudest voices. Next slide, please. Excellent. So I know that was a ton of information to digest. I don't really have much more to comment. Mayor Atchell might have some comments based on her experience, but thank you for your time.
Thanks, Councilor Patterson. There's a lot of work you put into that, and I'll just open the floor if there were questions or comments from others. Okay, I don't think I am going to add anything. I think you kind of captured the essence of it, and we'll leave it with council for sort of future comment back or see how we are able to take up some of the information and how we influence things here. So thank you, Councilor Patterson. And keeping myself on the journey here, I am going to look for a motion, please, to adjourn the committee of the whole. Councilor Raven, Councilor Buikema, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. And so back on the main agenda, and it is Councilor Raven.
On November 15th, there was Winter Gold at the Art Gallery. So there's a lot of vendors and they had a higher turnout than previous years. So that was really successful. And then November 16th, there was the Kaleidoscope Festival. So that's the multicultural event put on annually. So there was, during the day, there was vendors in the round room at Smithers Secondary School. And in the evening, there was actually an event. There was Polynesian dancers, Bollywood dancers, Ukrainian dancers, singers. It was really a fantastic event. One piece to put out there is that the current organizers are not going to organize for next year. So they're looking for volunteers to join a committee and bring it back in 2026. And then on November 21st, there was the ribbon cutting at Burger King. And I would say it was a whopping success.
Okay, you're done. Thanks, Councilor Raven. Counselor, were there questions for Councilor Raven? Councilor Ray.
Just in your absence, I attended both the Northwest Regional Hospital District meeting and the Regional District meeting. Probably a common theme to both was it's getting into budget season. The hospital district in particular, they pass a provisional budget because their budgetary year is different than the provinces. Just it's going to be interesting with the demands of all the hospitals and how much all the infrastructure costs are going up as they move from hospital project to hospital project. They're going to be struggling trying to keep the Northwest Regional Hospital District part of your taxes to a reasonable increase. So yeah, and then at the RD, probably they're moving into budget, and I did learn that there's a lot of difference in how they're able to use the RBA money versus how we are, and even to how we're supposed to set it aside. So just because the rules are different from RDs to towns, so that's kind of a summation. And other than that, staff did awesome in your absence. I didn't really step into the office and root about, so everything went smoothly.
Thanks, Councillor Ray, and thanks for attending those meetings and the feedback. Appreciate it. Thanks to all of council for working hard when I wasn't here. I appreciate the break more than you can imagine, and I'm feeling much more civil and hopefully more together than I was. So thanks very much. So especially for the coverage while I was gone. I don't have really anything to report other than the standing items on strategic priority because I've been away happily. However, I'm back. Okay, so we'll just move on to the 14s. I should actually say thanks to staff for the last couple of days too. I landed back with really, I felt like I lost all my memory. There's been a lot of questions that I've had for staff over the last couple of days, and there's been a lot of kindness and generosity in keeping me up to date again. So thank you for that. Okay, so at the 14s, the first couple are just recommendations to deal with the delegations that we received earlier. So just on your agenda is the first recommendation regarding the farmers market, and that we just look to staff to provide some feedback before the next meeting, or I'm actually inserting before the next meeting, but to provide feedback if someone cares to make that motion. Councillor Raven, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bucama, any discussion on that or anything you'd like to add for the staff to consider? Councillor Ray?
Just that I was wondering if council really needed an actual report, whether it's worth the staff's time, because both were fairly clear on what they asked for. And then also specific to this one, it's really going to depend on council strategic priorities when we actually get into the actual master planning of Central Park, unless Mr. George has something to add about there's a time frame for discussing that plan. But unless staff feels that there is information that we need, I'm not sure if I want to bother staff to make reports on either one of these.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Mr. George.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Ray. So now that the Parks and Recreation Master Plan has been approved, the next step is for Central Park is to follow the phased approach for that particular area, engaging all stakeholders, including the farmers market included in that. And the particular area that they're referencing is in phase 3 of that project. So it's already part of the work plan for implementing the Parks and Rec plan. We'll of course reach out to them as part of our follow-up just to let them know the status, but that's where we are for that.
Thanks, Mr. George. Okay, so we've got sort of Councillor Ray's feedback. I think the recommendation is on the agenda from staff. So unless council are determined that we don't want any information, perhaps we could leave it with staff to bring back a report at a time when they feel is the appropriate time. So if there's not an end date on the report, we'll get information at the time that the staff feel is right. I'm just maybe looking to Mr. Dorr, Mr. George to see if that's appropriate. So the recommendation, and it doesn't have a time frame. Are council okay with that? Okay, so that is the recommendation that's there. I'll just call the vote. All in favor? And opposed? Okay, so that's carried and there's no time pressure for staff. So when you feel we need information, you can bring it to us. Okay, then the second one was regarding the presentation from Ms. Larstone, and similar recommendation that we're going to get information back from staff. This one, well, let's see, is there, if someone's willing to move it? Councillor Patterson, is there a seconder? Councillor Raven? Okay, I heard what you said, Councilor Ray, is that you weren't sure there was a necessity to bring this back. This is one where I wouldn't mind having the feedback from staff, and I can get it otherwise if council doesn't want to have it, but I would like to have the input of staff. I did spend a little bit of time earlier today discussing with Ms. Larstone, and I appreciated that she said there's no limit on the number of people who could attend. And we had some discussion on whether or not there ought to be staff participation as well. So I wouldn't mind having the feedback from staff on what the staff perspective is, and then we can make a determination at the council table on who would like to attend. Okay, Councillor Leonard.
I'd be interested in knowing, as part of the information that comes back to council, just what municipalities might be represented on the group right now. So who's participating and who's not.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Leonard. I think informally, all councils from Rupert to Burns Lake have opportunity. And my understanding is some communities increase attendance when the subject matter is more pertinent to where they happen to be, but there isn't an exclusion. So those that are defined within the Skeena region are, members. I mean, there's not a membership fee or anything like that. So that we are a member by virtue of where we are. And so I'm just looking around the table if there's any other questions. And I think the motion's on the floor, so I think it's there already. We've got the motion already. Yeah, okay, moved and seconded. I think you moved it, Councillor Patterson, so good, you're willing to move it again. Your thought process is still there. Okay, any other questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thanks, folks. Okay, now we're at 14.3, so we have the report from Chief DeVries, who is with us tonight, just on a recommendation on getting rid of a piece of fire department equipment with a recommendation. Someone wants to put it on the floor? Councillor Patterson, Councillor Ray? Chief DeVries, anything you wanted to add?
We did reach out again to the Woodmere crew that with supplying this report and asking for their input and their response, and we did not hear back from them at all.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments from council or questions? Okay, recommendations on the floor, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. And 14.4, report from Ms. Smith, and this is on the reallocation of council travel funds. These things that affect council are always a bit awkward when they land at the table, and I think staff have tried to figure out a way to sort of deal with this. We deal with it every year. So staff have been looking for a way to sort of normalize what we might do. And so I also wanted to comment that while sometimes things appear maybe uneven, we all know at this table, different councillors have different ability to attend things. And so I just want to acknowledge Councillor Raven for making time available, sometimes when other people can't. So while it seems uneven, sometimes it's uneven because we have different abilities to go to things. So just as a bit of a preface to that. And so the recommendation is there to just sort of share our travel funds, which is what we do at the end of every year. So if someone wants to put that on the floor, that's great. Councillor Buikema and a seconder, Councillor Elliott. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Leonard?
I just have a question around process. So the fact that one councillor has exceeded their travel budget by $3,000. Is there a way for council to be notified sort of when they're reaching their maximum, just so we're a little more aware that maybe this could become an issue depending on what's booked?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I had the same discussion with Ms. Smith. Things change year to year. So we used to see more regularly just a kind of running total. Councillor Ray probably remembers on occasion, we would just see as part of a report from finance, here it is, like just where you are. So I think that's reasonable, and we'll maybe leave that with Mr. Doer to sort of report back on. Other than that, the process is similar to what we're doing now. Sometimes it would be very informal where a counselor would just say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be over, and we'd figure out live at the table how to adjust it. So Ms. Smith has come up with a way that's a bit more formalized, and we'll see how this works for us. But what we have is a global budget, and we're under that budget overall. So if does that sort of answer for you, Counselor?
Yeah, just the, the point itself, reading through the recommendation. I just thought about that. Is there a way to notify a counselor that they're reaching that? And then we can manage our own time accordingly, or like you said, have an informal conversation about, hey, I might be $1,000 over. Is everybody good?
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. Counselor Patterson and then Counselor Ray.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question through to staff. Do we base the spending on, based on fiscal year or calendar year?
We're a calendar year. It's
Calendar.
our year. Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to note that, obviously I have the highest amount remaining, but that, looking, for example, at, the mayor's remaining budget and how, much time or demand there is for the mayor to travel. Like, again, I was thinking, how can we do this so that you don't have to come back every single time? So like you talked about having like a more informal conversation so that staff don't have to prepare this report and come back time and time again. Is there a way that, so for example, recognizing now if I have that 8,100 remaining, then let's say Mayor Attrell or Councillor Raven needed more to get you through to the end of the year. Can we do that after this report, or do we have to come back to the table every single time?
I don't think there's a right or a wrong to that. I think we've done it different ways every year. And so staff have just looked for a way. We've also had changes in the finance department. We've had changes in corporate services. So our patterns aren't sticking, which I don't think, I'm fine when Ms. Smith sort of raised kind of getting a way through it. So I think we can do it any way we want. I took what Councillor Leonard was just saying. It's just, can we just know as we go? So I think the answer is yes. We just have to get a pattern from staff. Ms. Smith, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think previous years we've maintained an ongoing list and council's had regular updates, but due to some vacancies and capacity issues this year, that was not completed. So it was a bit of an oversight that Councillor Raven had went over, probably without her knowledge. So that will be hopefully remedied in future years.
Thanks, Ms. Smith. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So what I hear is we as council don't need to introduce any sort of policy to ensure the staff can do this. It'll just be taken care of. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dewar.
Yeah, and there again, and once we get capacity back in our finance department, especially, we can look at new processes so that there's more informal ways of kind of managing these budgets.
Thanks, Mr. Dewar. Councillor Ray.
A couple things. First of all, when I'm looking at what's available in mine, based on what I went to, I would have assumed that I had enough money to go. I went to a 2-day thing. NCLJ was here, so there were no hotels or anything, and I went to UBCM, and I don't think I have enough money remaining to go to another event. And there's all sorts of things that we seem to just barely by the skin of our teeth get one counselor to. I think Minerals North was one where it was, yeah. So it's kind of interesting to see how fast it's going. When I heard it was 10,000, I'm like, oh yeah, that's more than I remembered it being. I can never get enough time off to go to things, it seems like. So I always seem to have lots left, but I was surprised to see how low it was. It's brought me, I might introduce this at finance, but I thought I'd kind of bring it up tonight because we're midway through our term, maybe it wouldn't work. But just this idea that if we have a budget of $10,000, that if you don't spend it in 1 year, that it would carry forward for you so that you were able to attend more than one or two things if you have the opportunity and council has the need. Because I think, whatever is left over, like 26,000 is probably just going to go into general surplus, which is fine. But given the way the costs have been going up, that might be a way for somebody, maybe 1 year you only do one, but you're able to do 2 or 3 the next year and not have to worry about going in. And I think the other thing about the informal is it does I think it needs to be done at the council table so that we have some transparency. Nobody's blaming Councillor Raven, but it's important for the public, if any are watching tonight, to know that, you know, we've got a $10,000 travel budget and it doesn't really cover what maybe our constituents expect us to attend, or that we're able to attend. So I think, you know, we've always been very, you know, oh, I didn't get to go. There's never 7 councillors that can go and spend their entire allotment in 1 year, but it is important to do it in a public meeting, just so people are aware of the costs as well as just aware of how we're allocating our money.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. One thing for councillors and anyone who is watching is the decisions were always made in the public eye. It was just the conversation was a little bit formal where without the report that we have, for example, it would just be on the agenda, and similar to what Councillor Leonard said, someone might say, hey, we're going to have to readjust this. This is where I'm at. And we would just kind of have the more informal conversation. So having the numbers and a little bit of a recommendation on how to do it is also helpful. So there isn't one way, but it was always done. And when we start doing these things, they're always at the table. I appreciate your comments, Councillor Ray, and I think there's probably also room to talk a little bit about the events that probably, I don't know how to say really greatest interest, but events where we want to ensure that we have some representation from the council as well. There are organizations that focus on local government, and there is a learning opportunity there and a thing that I think makes us better at what we do. And so there's flexibility as well for people to attend other things. You know, some councillors take advantage of it, some don't. But I think there are some key events that we want to make sure that we have representation at. And perhaps when we have that conversation or the beginning of the year, or, I mean, those events, we had the emails earlier today about the resource forum, you know, booking has to happen early. I realized as I looked at the resource forum today, it's probably already too late, but to have a sense of what events are really worthwhile to have some representation at, and make sure we get representation at them. So, you know, there's key ones. We're talking about NCLGA, UBCM, FCM, then some regional ones, whether it's Minerals North, like making a determination that we have some people power ready and able to attend. And I say that with respect to the people at the table who are also taking vacation time to attend council events. That's not easy, but probably we could benefit as council from a few minutes of that exchange to say, you know, hey, in the next year, this is what I think I can do. I'm able to lift that one, you know, and make those days available just so that, you know, if people are feeling they might like to attend something else, we can just sort of hash through that as a group and make sure we've got the essentials covered. So sort of in addition to what you've said, we might want to just set aside a few minutes from that, or that would be my perspective. However, right now, we have a recommendation that covers our immediate need. And between us with all of that dialogue, we'll probably remember to have the rest of the conversation. So is there anything else just dealing with the recommendation in front of us? Can I call the vote? All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. And then, so I'll just look to Councillor Ray, maybe to communicate with staff when you want to have that conversation. And staff have heard us with the different sort of ideas on how to make this go smoothly, both for staff and council. All right, thanks, folks. So we are at, I should know where we're at. 14.5. Report from Ms. Smith on library board. Oh yeah, the other library board appointment. Councillor Leonard moving, Councillor Buckham seconds, and that is to reappoint Councillor Elliott to the library board for the coming term. And Councillor Elliott, you're willing? All right. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously, and thanks, Councillor Elliott. 14.6, report from Mr. Smith on the finance purchasing policy with a recommendation, and I'm just going to add a little piece to this. And council could consider how they want to do this. One, we do need to correct a bit of language. So my suggestion is going to be that we have a motion that anywhere the language engineering technician 1 or 2 is read, that it be changed to engineering technologist. Perhaps I'll just make that recommendation. I'm going to move that anywhere we see engineering technician 1 and 2, it be changed to engineering technologist. If I can have a seconder for that, Councillor Patterson. And it was just brought to me by staff as just a little error we needed to clean up. So if we can do that, then we can authorize the signing. Anything from staff that I may have missed or misspoken? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. Ms. McKinley, that's good. Okay. And then we've got the policy from Mr. Smith, just to authorize. Were there any questions on the policy? Are you ready to move? Councillor Ray moves.
I'll move that we move the recommendations as amended.
And Councillor Buckham seconds. And is there any discussion or questions on it? I see none, so I'm going to thank you for your work on that. Was that a question, Councillor Buckham? Are you ready to vote? People are just voting. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thanks. And thanks for the work on that. Appreciate it. Okay. Oh, this is. Report on item 14.7 and the report from Ms. Chandran for approval of the updated Town of Smithers Housing Needs Report with the recommendation. Councillor Ray? And a seconder, Councillor Raven. Any discussion? Took me a while to remember this. I had to read it all again to figure out that I'd been there before. So, but thank Ms. Chasdran for her work. Councillor Elliott or Councillor Leonard, sorry.
I'll just make a comment. You know, reading through this, I understand why we had to update the housing needs report and that it is a requirement coming from the provincial government. But reading through it myself, I think, you know, what really sort of spoke to me is that our population is expected to decline, and it's expected to decline with our younger people. So just food for thought at the table. If there's any concern around this information, it should be that, and us as a council should be thinking about maybe not so much. I mean, we have to think about housing, but we should be thinking about why our young people are leaving and ways to motivate them to stay.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Leonard. I did note that as well. And it makes me think about, you know, what if anything we can do, you know, through education on our side with the school district and then with the college. So we have worked with the college, you know, hopefully on a successful path toward gaining some housing for college age population, but working with even younger people to let them know what opportunities are here and how can they be supported through their education to stay. You know, there's work done through UNBC and particularly on the medical side to getting Northern doctors, people trained with the knowledge that if people can receive their education and do some practicums in Northern communities, that they're more likely to stay. So that might be one opportunity as well as is there parallel work that can be done in other sectors that lets people know that there's a positive life and a positive career option for them in the Northern and smaller communities. So I think it's a really good point. Councillor Ray?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, and I think credit goes to both this council, past council, but especially staff, that in the opinion of the project team at this time, no further OCP and zoning amendments are required. You know, I've been doing this a long time, and housing hasn't always been the focus it is now, but right from the word go, council has always been concerned about housing. I think the councils with the support of staff have been out ahead of a lot of changes that have been required. Legalizing secondary suites, carriage homes, they haven't always been taken up right away. Even Ambleside, that was a recommendation from somebody on council to start looking ahead to our future housing needs. We weren't maybe as in focused with the multifamily part, but the proponent we chose to work with has seen where the market's leading and has responded as well. We didn't just end up with all single family homes out of that. There's been some response to the market. So I do share Councillor Leonard's concern somewhat, but if we're doing the right things, hopefully it'll help our housing market and hopefully it'll be a bit of a more of a reason for a young person to stay.
Yeah, thanks, Councilor Ray. I think maybe the other piece that would be food for thought is having, joint conversations as well with the regional district. Recognizing that some of the growth is happening in the rural area right outside of our community. And that, decisions made at other levels enable increased housing to happen on rural properties right outside the community as well. So there is some growth happening. I think your point is still accurate. But we need to be thinking about what's happening in our community, which expands beyond the actual boundaries of the town of Smithers. So it's about how do we retain people? How do we house people? And then how do we work across what's actually our community, not just the town of Smithers, to make sure we have the services to support what the population is that's actually utilizing the community. We're not going to solve this tonight, but I think there are some, like some head scratching conversations about, similar to the area where Councillor Patterson was talking about, is like, what do we foresee the problem might be? Who's involved in that problem? How do we get them to the table and how do we collectively work toward the solutions we think might be ideal over 10, 20, 30, 40 years? The decisions that are made by those that are 17, 18 now and where they live will affect us in the future for decades. So I think there are some think tank moments coming, and it might be something if you're thinking about it when we come back together, or creating our own little mini think tank about how do we want to actually approach that. It is part of our responsibility to think about the future of this community and what can we seed now that will make this a successful community in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. We can't affect everything, but we can probably affect some things. So I think it's really good points that you both have raised. Councillor Ray.
Sorry to flash the hand while you're talking about it. It just put a light bulb up at the regional district meeting. I can't remember if we took it to third reading or I've actually passed it, but the changes to the RD's zoning bylaw for the same thing. And one of the things that was recognized in those changes in the report was that the growth does need to take place in the urban centers where the services are. So there wasn't a big thing, well, let's get all the growth in the rural areas. It is definitely RD staff recognizes that we being urban places have the services, and that's where the growth needs to be.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ray. I think we could go down a rabbit hole right now. I think the one thing we might want to take as a takeaway, and it's just a heads up because we have staff at the table, is collectively figuring out how do we have that conversation with the regional district. We have talked at the RD table about whether or not we want to do a regional growth strategy. We haven't gotten there, but we're a pretty small footprint of a town, and our community, even if we think just like a kilometer going toward the airport, becomes the regional district very quickly. And so there is some co-thinking that we could do there on behalf of everyone, because the properties in the RD can have second homes now too. So there's going to be an increased pressure just with the fact that people can and will want to have second homes on their property. So enough said. Leave it there, but let's pick this up again because it's really sort of one of those great visioning conversations for the future. All right, I'm going to cut myself off. We're at the 15s and we have a report from Ms. Westberg who's letting. Do we? Really? This one too? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. There's people that are covering this for you, Ms. McKinley. Like, yeah. Yes, we can. Let's take a 5-minute break, or how about 8:15, 7 minutes? We are recessed. So where we are, we've just moved into the 15s and the report from, I think I missed one. Report from Ms. Westberg, just the notification of vacancies. So if there's any question for staff, we can take them, and otherwise we'll just move on. It's a good list. And then 15.2 from Ms. LeBlanc on the communication plan, and this is also just for information. If there are any questions, Ms. LeBlanc is here. Councillor Bray.
It's just actually a comment through to Ms. LeBlanc, and I see a lot of the public wants to have two-way engagement. And I just, you're the one that's living most of it, but I've already seen on some of your posts responses that I wouldn't think they may be appropriate to direct to the counselor, but not to staff. And so I just want to, you know, just throw my support behind if you're going to open that two-way from the public to staff, that there are very clear lines drawn as to what you can say to the staff before you're just banned from being able to use that. I mean, there's freedom of speech, but then there's also harassment, et cetera. And, you know, just based on what I've seen so far, and I think you're doing an awesome job with your communications, but people purposely twisting communications to fit their needs, and then just directing maybe anger that is better directed at council, to the staff. I think there was one about the last sweeping of the streets, and somebody went on a big rant about it. And I just think if I was a staff member, I wouldn't want to see that. So I just want to maybe put out there that at least this counselor feels that there is a line where staff shouldn't be subjected to abuse, and shutting off comments is one way, but there, you know, if it's particular people over and over again, like it is on some of the other Facebook forums, definitely would support some sort of mechanism where a person would not be allowed to comment anymore if they were abusive.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Ms. LeBlanc, did you have anything you wanted to offer?
No, I do appreciate that for sure. What we've seen through this survey is that the community does want two-way communication, so I am trying my best to answer questions within my capacity. Although there are some questions that I do not answer and I don't respond to. And I agree, some do get a little out of hand and twisted, but it's part of the game as well.
Thanks, Ms. LeBlanc. Anyone else? Councillor Raven?
I just wanted to highlight one of the responses, and it was about having like Town of Smithers bulletin boards. I know it's something that's been brought up to me quite a few times as well, but just sometimes that kind of old school where there's like a set town bulletin board available. In here, it was even mentioned like having one by like Central Park because the farmer's market is there. So I just think it's something interesting, and maybe something for council to think about is seeing if there's a cost associated with a specific town bulletin board, just because there are like social media is great, and we've seen significant growth definitely on the channels, but that's not how everybody gets their information. So sometimes new is great, but going a bit old school is good as well. And just, yeah, definitely appreciated all the feedback from everybody.
Thanks, Councillor Raven. Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick comment through to staff, just exceptional work, just an incredible amount of information to wade through, and just remembering this is one of the first things that we as a council sort of debated and adopted. So to see it come to fruition, even in such short order since you've been appointed, is quite exceptional. So I just wanted to say thank you and exceptional work.
Thanks, Councillor Patterson. Anyone else? Well, I'm going to echo it. I really appreciate the effort that you've made, Ms. LeBlanc. It's showing up, and I've had feedback from people in the community that appreciate it as well. And maybe the only other thing I'd offer in addition to what Councillor Ray said, if there is any time you're feeling like, whoa, I'd really like a counselor to jump in. I watch it, but I don't see it all the time. And so I'm happy to take that if there's a way we can back you up or something. And I think you're more than competent in dealing with it. But if there's a moment when you want someone to jump into something, I think feel free to reach out. So we'll just leave that in your court. And I think, you know, the work on this report and the work that you're doing already, and kind of jumping ahead of things is really appreciated. You're doing a great job. So thank you very much. And no motions are required. Alrighty. All right. We're up to 16. Everyone has the sheet. Mr. Allen is smiling. I'm teasing. This is the report from Mr. Lee, our planner. So there's a lot of material in the report. However, and it requires a lot of motions, but the work that was done needs to be commended as well. And sort of sorting out all the motions to bring everything together was also a piece of work. So thanks to staff for getting us the cheat sheet as well, which will help us through all the motions. So maybe before I start there, I'll just open the floor and see if there's any comments or questions from staff about any of the things in the report. And then we're going to start moving through all the motions. So if anyone has questions, comments, concerns. Councillor Patterson?
To be provocative, is there any reason why we couldn't move them all?
Yes, there is. There are legal reasons for how we do the readings and bylaws. And it's going to be a bit sloggy, but we're going to move them one at a time. I think there's 16, so just get ready. All right, so I don't have any other questions. Let's just start then, and I am using the extra sheet. So if people are wondering where I'm getting my motions from, that's where I'm starting. Thanks, Ms. LeBlanc, for joining us tonight. Okay, so we're going to start with bylaw number 1964, and we do need the first reading. Councillor Ray, Councillor Raven, no discussion, all in favor? Any opposed? Second reading, please. Councillor Patterson, Councillor Bucama, discussion permitted. Councillor Ray.
I actually just had a question about the music. And I was just wondering, perhaps through to Mr. Allen, if people with fixed shops are allowed to have music on the outside of their business into the public.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mayor Atchell, to Councillor Ray. Yeah, all music is regulated under our noise bylaw pretty much. And yeah, we've noticed that some businesses and some mobile vendors have actually had music during operations. And we've not received any complaints. So I think noise is primarily complaint driven. And I believe if our community safety officers were receiving the complaints, we would enforce the noise bylaw accordingly. But at this point, and it was one of the items that was requested with the public engagement with the mobile vendor operators, that music be available and not prohibited. So that's why it's in the bylaw.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure that was a level playing field with the brick and mortar vendors. And just while I have the floor, I think, you know, having been here since kind of the first one, it's been getting increasingly difficult to try and be consistent as a member of council when we're being brought one-offs. And I think this pulls together a lot of things, and even some things like the music that we hadn't even thought of. And so I think this is a really great step forward. I'm interested to see how it goes down at Riverside. You know, and that was what made me think of the music, is that's the one place I thought maybe it might not be appropriate, but I don't know. I think campers play music down there. It's not quite the same camping experience that you get down, you know, out on a forestry campsite or something like that. So great work, and I look forward to seeing it in action.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Anyone else? Okay, we're at bylaw 1964, second reading. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. And okay, then we're at the amendments and with the reference there. So points 1, 2, and 3. If someone wants to move that amendment, please. Councillor Ray, Councillor Leonard. It's on the floor. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. And recommendation 4 that we do the third reading, please. Councillor Bucama, Councillor Patterson, all in favor?
Sorry, Your Worship, does that have to be as amended? I can never remember. if we amend it at second, if it needs to be moved as amended.
I would think the detail on that is it is amended now. And staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but once it's amended, we're voting on. We are voting on it as amended, but it doesn't require the language. But thanks for the question. And I think we're voting now. It's on the floor. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. Okay. That's 1964. So for bylaw 1970, so this is the business license bylaw. First reading, please. Counselor Raven, Counselor Elliott. No discussion, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. And second reading, please. Counselor Patterson, Counselor Raven. Discussion now, if there is any. Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried unanimously. And third reading, bylaw 1970, Counselor Ray, Counselor Bucama. And all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. That's 1970. Okay, first reading for 1971, fees and charges. Counselor Bucama, Counselor Patterson. No discussion, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And second reading, please. Counselor Raven, Counselor Leonard. Discussion if there is some. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. And third reading. Counselor Raven, Counselor Leonard. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. That's 1971. Okay, zoning bylaw 1975 for first reading, please. Counselor Ray, Counselor Bucama, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Second reading, Counselor Patterson, Counselor Raven. Discussion if there is any or questions. Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And third reading. Someone, Ms. Smith. Oh, no, this is the public hearing. Sorry, thank you for catching me up. I'm on a roll here. So sorry, this is actually the requirement to waive the requirement for the public hearing. Thanks, Ms. Smith. So in this case, we need to waive the public hearing requirement. So I'm looking for a motion. Counselor Patterson, Counselor Raven, Counselor Bucama. Questions? If there's any. I see your face, Counselor Ray. Question or comment?
This is gonna be my general comment every time we waive a public hearing. I understand that it's in the OCP and such, but I just think the removal of a public hearing for this, I'll probably vote with it. You know, it is a staff's recommendation, but just the province making that change, it's a part of democracy to be able to come and tell us that you think that what we're doing is not right, even if you're in NIMBY or whatever kind of words the province has used. Probably what would happen if we had the public hearing is that you'd read your stuff, nobody would say anything, and we'd move on. But I like having that ability for the public to come and oppose something, even if it's in the official community plan.
Thanks, Counselor Ray. Counselor Leonard.
Yeah, I'll just support Counselor Ray in that. That was my feeling as well. It's just because we can doesn't mean it's the right thing. And you know, I don't see any reason with holding a public hearing. I will vote with the majority and pass it, but I do have concerns because it's just too easy to waive it because it is part of the OCP. So, you know, earlier we were talking about transparency. So for me, it's important that we do go through the process of asking the public what they think.
Thanks, Counselor Leonard. Mr. Allen.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Attrell. I just wanted just for advice to council that, or information, I guess, that for the business license amendment, there will be opportunity for public comments, and that will be advertised for us. I don't know if it'll be at the next meeting, but at a subsequent meeting. So there will be an opportunity for the public and the mobile vendor operators to bring forward their comments. It won't be specific for the zoning bylaw, of course, but it would be in relation to the business licensing regulation. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Allen. Okay, any other questions or comments on that? I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously. Okay. Bylaw 1976, first reading, bylaw enforcement. Counselor Bucama, Counselor Raven. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Bylaw 1976, second reading, please. Counselor Patterson, Counselor Raven. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. And a third reading, bylaw 1976, Counselor Ray, Counselor Bucama. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Whew. Thanks for the cheat sheet, even though I missed a couple of things. Appreciate it. Thanks, council. Okay. And 16.2, a report from Mr. Smith, and this is the Northwest BC Regional Funding Agreement Reserve. BC Regional Funding Agreement Reserve. I'm going to have a hard trouble with not just saying RBA, but there we go. Same. So, and a recommendation to give 3 readings to the reserve. I'll just ask if there's any questions of clarity before we break that up. Okay, seeing none, can I have first reading for bylaw 1982? Counselor Ray, Counselor Raven, all in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. And second reading, Counselor Bucama, Counselor Ray, discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. And third reading, please. Counselor Raven, someone on this side, Counselor Leonard. Discussion. All in favor? And that's carried. All right. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your work. You're welcome to stay all night. Okay. I'm teasing you. Have your evening. What's left? We're close now. Okay, there's nothing under the 17s, and we have some letters under the 18s. So a series of letters lumped together dealing with the Creation Station and one from the Office of the Human Rights Commissioner. Is there anything people would like to discuss from those? Counselor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question through to staff specific to the Creation Station. My understanding from our last meeting is that staff are working with the Smithers Art Gallery to find an alternative location. Is that correct?
Mr. Dewar?
Correct.
And if I may just make one comment, while I appreciate a lot of the letters that were written from folks, just to be really clear that while obviously, arts is incredibly important for all the age demographic, I'm one of the people that are facing the 2.5-year wait list without having childcare within our community. And I just want people who are listening in, if there is anyone listening in, just to understand the reality of what that means for me and my family. We talked about reasons why young people might be leaving. I'm not that young, but it is actually something that me and my family are talking about, and that me potentially having to leave my job and potentially having to pay back my maternity and maybe even having to relocate if we're unable to find childcare. So I just want to let folks know that while I appreciate their writing in, we are desperate for childcare in this community, and I'm sure it wasn't a decision that was made lightly by this council. Thank you.
Thanks, Counselor Patterson. Any other comments? All right. I think we're there. Have I missed anything? All right, thanks, Council, for your work, and staff for all the reports that you presented. It's much appreciated. And I think I'll take a motion to adjourn, please. Counselor Ray, Counselor Patterson, all in favor? Any opposed? And thank you. We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone. 8:34.